Hi, welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Before we talk to Sanjeev Bhaskar about his voyage of discovery in the land of his fathers, India, a remarkable human story. Rachel North had a very, very bad 2 or 3 years. First, she was violently assaulted and raped by a stranger in her flat. Indeed, she was very nearly killed and only survived by pretending to be dead. And then, still recovering from that ordeal, she was caught up in a terrorist atrocity.
Rachel was on the Piccadilly Line tube train blown up in the 7/7 bombings. She was very close to the suicide bomber when he detonated his backpack, and a piece of metal narrowly missed an artery in her wrist.
By a dreadful coincidence, Rachel was actually reading a magazine article about her rape when the bomb went off. A grotesque synergy between two life-shattering events.
As Rachel staggered with the other passengers into the daylight, she resolved to rise above both experiences, and she has.
Well, partly because of her strength of character and partly because of her father, Philip and Faden, canon of Norwich Cathedral. Father and daughter are here now. It's lovely to see you both. We read about you in the relative value section of the Sunday Times on Sunday. We just thought we've got to get you in because it's a story of true hope and an overcoming terrible adversity. One often reads the parents of a girl who's been raped saying her life is ruined, her life is over. That was absolutely not your joint response to what happened to you in the first instance, was it?
Well, having known Rachel 30-odd years, I knew she's got this amazing strength of character to overcome adversity, and I think we were perhaps in some ways more in shock than she was at the time. Of course, the thing unfolded for you in a much more dramatic way, but I had no doubt she would cope.
You said, certainly when I was reading about it, you said that you felt that you could sort of cope, but you found it very, very difficult for the idea of your parents coming to see you. You actually had to make an effort to make them feel better.
Well, this is the thing. I could kind of cope with it happening to me, but I felt this terrible sense of shame and responsibility that my parents were going to pick up the phone and effectively have me dropping a bomb on their life. And I didn't want them to see me because my face was so unrecognisable. I knew that that image would stay with them.
Beaten.
Very, very bad. I had 40 separate injuries. My whole face just was unrecognisable. And I didn't want my father and mother to have that memory burned into their consciousness of their daughter looking like that.
So you were both wanting to protect each other?
Yes.
Yes. I could tell in Rachel's voice when she phoned me that there was something terrible wrong.
Yes.
She was actually saying, "I hope you're well," and things like that. I knew something's wrong, and I had to almost force it out. Well, in fact, I think you handed the phone over to your boyfriend.
I was trying to protect you. Yes.
Well, one trauma, is enough for one life. But then, July the 7th, you were on the King's Cross tube, weren't you, when the bomb went off? What were your injuries?
I was very fortunate. The bomber was actually standing 7 or 8 feet behind me, but because the crowds and the carriage were so huge, it was packed full of people. There were about 8 people between me and the bomber, and they took the full blast. And I got away with very minor injuries, ear damage. I've had a big piece of metal stuck in my wrist bone, glass cuts, and so on. But I was saved by other people taking the force of the blow.
A lot of people who've been through either or both experiences of that kind would say, why me? Again, why me? Why me? Did you ever fall prey to that?
I tried not to, because I felt in some ways that I was, I'd survived twice, and I was very fortunate to have my family and my friends caring for me so wonderfully, and I felt I kind of owed it to them to not give up and to keep going. And I also knew that there were so many other people. 26 people died in my carriage. Over 100 are injured. I've considered myself lucky.
Well, I mean, the thing that really interests me about it is this mutual interdependence of the family unit. I know you were very severely affected by what happened. I mean, you subsequently had a breakdown, didn't you? And because you found the stress so hard to cope with your little daughter. But how much did your faith, I know at some point as a kind of the daughter of a priest, basically, you kind of became fairly disillusioned with the church, didn't you, when you were going through your rebellious phase, certainly. But how did you find that? Did it help at all, thinking back to those days when you used to go to church regularly with your father?
I think something of the beauty and the spirituality of the language had seeped into me over the years. And although, yes, like many teenage girls, I kicked back against the traces a bit. What happened on the night of the rape and on the bomb, which was as dark as a nighttime experience in that dark carriage, was some words from a very ancient monastic service called Compline came to me. And I know Dad and I both have a great love for this very beautiful ancient form of service. The Compline service is about candles and darkness, very simple, and it says words like, lighten our darkness, keep me under the shadow of thy wing. And it was about the sense of feeling protected and guarded.
Make me as an apple of an eye. It's a lovely language from the Psalms mostly, and it actually it both sustains you and breaks you at the same time, because I still find even now some of those.
But you found strength from that.
I found strength from that. It's almost. I mean, I tend to see God in people rather than God in services. I tend to, when I see the emergency services running into unknown danger down that tunnel, when I saw the hands of strangers in my carriage supporting each other in the dark, that to me was God. But there was this sense that because of my background, because of the work that my father has done, that I've grown up with, there was a sense of finding spirituality and comfort even in the most difficult circumstances.
Well, that's what it's for, though, isn't it? Ultimately, well, I mean, when we're rubbing along, bouncing along on a sunny day, eating ice cream on the seaside, faith isn't really very important. It's precisely when you're at the darkest hour of need.
Well, it's bringing light into a dark situation. It's being able to redeem a terrible situation. It's death and resurrection. It's all these.
And does that involve forgiveness in terms of the man who raped you and in terms of the bomber who tried to kill you?
That was the thing that tipped me, because that evening of the rape, I'd had the news. I had a church council meeting. We started with the Lord's Prayer, and when I got to forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against it, I had to be taken out because I just completely broke down. But that is the thing you have to hang on to, that the only way to make this world a better place is to rejoice in God's forgiveness and share it with other people, even though it's impossible sometimes.
And have you been able to do that?
Well, forgive people. I mean, it's like I don't consider myself to be a Christian in the same sense that Dad is. I had problems with the word forgiveness because it's such a loaded term. For me, forgiveness is about moving through the storm and not letting myself be consumed with rage and with
bitterness,
hate.
yes.
Yeah, because that just eats you up inside. So for me, forgiveness is sharing my experiences freely, not allowing myself to feel ashamed, looking for the goodness in other people. And the men who attacked me, I mean, one is dead, one is in jail for 15 years. They are no longer part of my life, and I instead try to look at the other people.
Well, we have to say that this interview and the piece in the Sunday Times is premised on the book that Rachel's written. It's called Out of the Tunnel, which is an interesting turn of phrase. Before and after 7/7, your story. It's a beautiful book.
Because you actually formed the King's Cross campaigning society, didn't you?
Yes, I became friends with over 120 people from my train.
And you got married this May in your father's church?
In Dad's
Norwich Cathedral.
It was wonderful, yeah. Such a happy day.
I bet.
Really came out of the tunnel on that.
Well, it's lovely to see you both, meet you in the flesh, and many congratulations on coming through some heavy stuff.
Thank you very much.
Now,